My name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk a little bit about two fearful avoidants in a relationship together. This is a question I've received a lot about, and what I've decided to do over the next few days, because I get so many requests around this, is to create a series. So we'll go through like two fearful avoidants together in a relationship, some of the patterns you'll see, some of the tools you have to sort of work through and work on. I can do like sort of a part 1 and 2 about what I see at a high level, and then strategies and tools in a second video, because there will be a lot to cover in there. So for fearful avoidance, 2 DAs together, 2 anxious together, and then the combinations between the different styles. So including secure as well. So first and foremost, just as a side note, if there are 2 anxious together or 2 dismissives together, usually one has like a variation. They lean really strongly in a different direction, because it's actually very, very unlikely to have 2 individuals with a similar degree of anxiety or dismissiveness in a relationship with one another, because they sort of like polarize each other, like you can imagine the same end of 2 magnets. And think about it, like if you have 2 people who are dismissive and nobody wants to make the first move, even if they connect well as people, and even if there's so many similarities and parts of compatibility, often they sort of like push each other apart, right? Because nobody wants to make the first move, or we tend to naturally feel resentful, or sort of a sense of there's a word I'm looking for, just like the need to create space between somebody who's too much like us to a certain degree. And so we'll go into that when we talk about those styles, but fearful avoidants are different because they have access to both sides of the attachment spectrum. So you can have a fearful avoidant leaning anxious, or a fearful avoidant leaning dismissive, and they're still likely to end up in a relationship together to a certain degree. There's not like an unlikelihood, if that makes sense. And they usually do one of 2 things. They either polarize each other based on which way they already lean. So the fearful avoidant leaning anxious becomes more anxious, and the fearful avoidant leaning dismissive becomes more dismissive. And then they sort of act out this anxious dismissive relationship, or they become like these pinballs going back and forth, where, one day somebody's more anxious and the other day somebody's more dismissive, and they sort of go back and forth. Now, the relationship between 2 fearful avoidants can be like fireworks and then like explosions. So it sort of goes like because both individuals have such a great capacity to meet each other's needs deeply and be present and want to meet each other's needs and understand and empathize completely. When they show up in a relationship with one another, that connection and that bond can be so powerful and so profound. And because if there's a bit of an unhealed part, there's the attachment wounds and triggers and trust issues and these different things that can show up, it's almost like you have that much more of an investment in something. And then when it starts to go awry, it obviously creates that much more emotional dysregulation and challenges. So I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff right now. I do want to let you guys know, I am trying to create a daily video right now, just during this time of isolation and quarantine and everything that's happening in the world. So we're doing a stay-at-home sale. It's 25% off all membership bundles. So 3-month, 6-month, 12-month. And the link is in the description below. And the coupon code is with you, all one word. And if you have any challenges, you really want to be a part of the community, but you're going through some financial struggles, reach out to my team at info@personaldevelopmentschool.com and just, tell them a little bit about your situation. And we're going to try to help everybody out as much as we possibly can. We also have 2 live webinars every week. We're adding a 3rd one in the weeks to come, just during this time to create more support for our network. And we also have these little mastermind groups that are popping up and doing little breakout sessions and doing workbooks together and connecting and all these different things, so that you can still have this sense of community, even if you're not feeling like you get the face-to-face interaction. Maybe you get more vulnerability and depth through like-minded community and having deeper conversations with people, even if you're not face-to-face. So we're trying to do whatever we can to support. I'm also listening to the videos. I see your guys' comments. You guys want me to do an attachment style series about friendships. I'm going to do that right after this one. So I'm on top of it, and I'm here to support you guys, and let me know anything that you need, okay? So back to this, as I got distracted. So either the 2 fearful avoidants will polarize each other completely, and one will become more anxious, pervasively, and the other will become more dismissive pervasively, or there'll be this ping-ponging back and forth. And so the depth and the quality of the relationship can be really profound. But in the 6 stages, like we talk about in the advanced fearful avoidant courses, and a lot on this channel too, like the 6 stages of a relationship. And often what you'll see is in the dating stage, before too much vulnerability is required, that's excessive, fearful avoidants are like bees to honey, like just connect so powerfully. And then when the honeymoon stage comes in and there's all this investment and there's more vulnerability, it almost triggers the power struggle stage quite immediately. And there can be a lot of this sort of chaos and feeling like you care so much, but you can't quite find your footing. Like, it's like you just want to get off being on the rocks, and then you take a step forward and you're like, oh, thank goodness, this is so amazing. And then it's rocky all over again. And so it can be really difficult for 2 individuals to gain traction long-term in a relationship of this type as well, unless, of course, you're working on making your attachment style more secure. And as long as one party or it can initiate and hold space to become more secure, and then the other party can be open to working and like being on board and doing the same thing, this can also be one of the most beautiful relationship dynamics that I see. And so the reason for this is like both people care so deeply, empathize so much, meet each other's needs so well. And as long as you don't become too codependent, and as long as you carve out space to express your needs and be vulnerable and learn to be safe in vulnerability and work out trust issues, this can be a powerful and beautiful relationship. So it's really important. You know, I sort of think of it's sort of like an analogy, or like just the way I picture it, but I think of like the unhealthy version of 2 fearful avoidants together who really care about one another as sort of like 2 high-powered like political leaders trying to negotiate. It's like always waiting and watching and being hyper vigilant and careful and even like testing a little bit for, you know, to see like any incongruencies, or like always sort of putting their partner in a space where they're watching and they're hyper vigilant and seeing, like, can I trust? What if I do this? Will they go this way or this way? And, you know, it's like funny in a way because, you know, the analogy itself is like, you can see that, right? Like there's this hyper vigilance and this like intensity behind it, and like, you know, just depth that they bring to the table. But you don't want to live like that in a relationship, because that's extremely hard, and honestly it's excruciating. So you really, like, if you're in this relationship now and you want this to work, you have to work on building trust and learning how to trust. Okay. And we do talk about this. If you guys want more videos on that, like I do have a big part of our advanced fearful avoidant course and relationship mastery course about like digging up trust, how to repair trust. We have webinars on trust. Like it's a really broad topic just in and of itself that I could create like a whole series around, because there's really important specific steps that are required in order to rebuild trust and in order to learn how to trust. And so let me know in the comments below if you want me to make videos about that. I'm not going to get too off topic in this video, but that's a non-negotiable. If you're a fearful avoidant and you want to fix a relationship, or you want just to have healthy relationships, you have to learn how to trust. And trust doesn't mean like blind trust. Trust means like having steps and boundaries in the conversations that you have in a specific manner, so that you can actually build up trust and learn to understand people and where they're coming from. Okay. And without vulnerability, this is another thing for 2 fearful avoidants together, without vulnerability, the relationship's not going to work either. So trust and vulnerability are absolutely key. And some ways you can do this just at a high level is like, make sure you over explain things to your partner and ask if they over explain things to you. So if your partner is like, hey, I can't hang out tonight anymore, and they call you on the phone and they're like, I'm not available, you know, don't just be like, I'm not available. Be like, I would love to hang out. Here's the reason why I'm not available. I'd love to see you again soon. Like, make sure that you're conscientious and you're aware that the person you're talking to in the relationship is similar to yourself. If you're watching this and you're the FA, where, you know, every little move means something, because there's not this like consistency of an attachment strategy. So your partner is like micro hyper analyzing everything that sort of takes place. So the more you can over explain, the person will start to understand your intentions and understand who you are and how you operate, because they understand the fearful avoidant is always looking for the why underneath. And if you naturally give that to them, that's going to help to build trust as well. So communicate, over explain, talk about the meaning you give to things, bring that vulnerability to the table. Like if your partner goes, hey, we go back to the example, and they're like, hey, I can't spend time together tonight, bye. You know, if you make that mean, if the story or narrative you create around that is they don't care about me at all, you have to bring that to the table. Keeping that to yourself, you're just going to become spiteful or push away or become avoidant or like act out of a protest behavior because you're in so much pain. So you want to be able to have the conversation that says, hey, you know, it's totally okay to not have to spend time together all the time. But, you know, I really need an explanation when those things happen because I feel unsafe, or I feel like I'm not cared about very much, or I'm not important. So I really want to understand why. And if you can share that with me next time, if that ever takes place, and I promise to do the same with you, I think that'll benefit our relationship. And these are the types of conversations you need to be bringing in. So over communication, building trust, having vulnerability, expressing your needs is of the utmost importance as well. Talk about your needs. Both fearful avoidant parties love to meet each other's needs if they're clearly expressed and if they're not in a power struggle. And then the other part is the questioning the meaning you give to things. Okay, these are so important. And some other big things, like some little strategies you can implement at a very high level. There's so much more to say again about trust, but like set the intention that you have like an open door policy. Like, hey, if you're feeling afraid about something or insecure or uncomfortable, like we're going to chat with one another about it. We're going to create that space in our relationship where we have those conversations, even if they're tough, even if it's frustrating at times. We're going to commit to working through those things together. Okay. And if the trust is there, the relationship is likely to thrive. And if the vulnerability is there, the relationship is likely to thrive. But just a couple other things you also want to pay attention to is the emotional volatility. Like that is a big destructor of relationships long term. Fearful avoidants have more like perseverance in that area. They tend to have a bit of a subconscious comfort zone around emotional volatility. So they tend to be able to like move with it and accept it. Like, hey, you know, you were emotionally volatile yesterday, but it's fine. Like, I'm used to that. I grew up around that. Like, they tend to be a little bit more like that, but it doesn't mean that it's not wearing at your relationship long term. It's more like water against rocks over time instead of like, you know, for other people, it might be like water against a sandcastle. Like, it wears down a lot faster, but it doesn't mean that it's still not wearing the relationship down. And like, you know, there are certain things we need for a long-term healthy relationship. And that's, you know, we don't need things to be worn down over time. We need to do everything we can to prevent that from happening, because that means that your relationship's always on the downhill, right? We need to be doing things that create habits to consistently strengthen our relationships over time. And we also want to keep our resentment tanks on empty. Like people are like, oh yeah, it's okay to carry a little bit of resentment, or some people are just think it's a norm to like always be resentful. It's not. You want to make sure that your intention is, if there's anything standing between us, resentment is like an invisible wall, and they get built and built and built and built, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, I don't even feel connected to this person anymore. So don't let that happen. Okay. So really what resentment is unmet needs and then a lack of communication. So talk these things out. There's so much more I can say about this relationship dynamic. Let me know what you want in the comments below. Videos around trust, strategies for rebuilding this dynamic more, just more info about two fearful avoidants together in general. Keep me posted. I'm here to support you guys, and I will see you in the next video.